as I told, initially it was planned to talk about Kotlin multi-platform, but I thought that it would be better if we start with mobile development overview in general first. So here we are. Back in the days, things were simple. You either have native app or web app, nothing else. Then things start getting more complicated. We have cross-platform apps or basically hybrid apps, but that's not the point. Nowadays, we have something like this. You have hybrid apps, native apps, PWAs, cross-platform apps, or web apps wrapped in native apps, and literally any combination of these five and like anything in between. So let's try to make sense of all this. Well, the most easy part is native apps, like the default one. The plus sides are, well, you have the best performance possible. You have access to all the APIs at the day they arrived. You can basically do whatever you want on each of the platforms, like a bit more on Android, a bit less on iOS, but it's the specifics of the platform. The problem is that you have two absolutely independent code bases, and you need allegedly fit two developers for at least one app. Not an ideal thing. So let's start with the website of things then. If you want to show something on your mobile phone, the easiest thing to do is actually a PWA, which is Progressive Web App. The plus side, you have all your known web technologies. You can use basically everything you used to. You have slightly better access to certain native APIs. You can even add a shortcut to this app to your home screen, and it actually looks like the native app to a certain degree. But you can't distribute it through App Store and Google Play, and in some ways we want it because that's how people find your app. Also, the downside is actually iOS and Safari. That's actually a bit funny because the first, when iOS started, it was apps built with HTML5, and now we have a situation when iOS and Safari is what's kind of stops PWA progressing further and further. So, yeah. Next step would be wrapping your web application into native app or cross-platform app. In my opinion, the latter makes more sense because at least you will not have like two separate code bases still. The plus sides are the same. You have your web app, and you can publish it to App Store and Google Play. The downside is it will be published in App Store and Google Play. The downside is because now you need to comply with all the regulations, compliances, all this stuff. The team come up with like every 2-4 months. Yeah. If we go a bit further, we have hybrid apps, hybrid frameworks, shall we say, like Ionic. There are more of them, but as far as I know, this one is the one that's still alive and in development. You're still using all your good old web technologies, but now it's less of a web page and more of the app. You have a lot of pre-built UI components that are optimized for mobile devices. You have a lot of integrations. In fact, many React Native integrations for third-party services are built on top of what we inherited from Ionic framework. So good stuff. The downside, kinda, it's still a web page, not a native app. Well, we can pretend it doesn't matter, but it does. They feel differently, they behave differently. So, yeah. Next, we can move to cross-platform. There are two main players here, Flutter and React Native. There are more of them, obviously, but the two biggest ones at the moment. Let's start with React Native. It's not good old web anymore, but it's still good old React. So to a certain degree, if you're familiar with React, you'll be able to work with React Native app. The biggest improvement compared to Ionic, to PWA, or whatever else, basically web-based solution, is that you get fully native mobile apps in the end. I don't think this misconception is still alive, but sometimes people still think that with React Native it's a web app. It's not. You basically have a JavaScript bundle that through the bridge talks to a native platform and tell it how to draw stuff and how to interact with different services. That's it. The downside here is that basically everything you want to build will require third-party dependency. And the more third-party dependencies you have, the more problems you have, because people stop supporting them, abandoning them. You need to be sure they play nice together and keep it like a healthy infrastructure. And to a certain degree, React Native has dependency itself, because previously we had two separate projects with native code, and now we have three projects smooshed together, but we mainly care about one, the React Native one. Another downside is that sometimes you'll need to touch native code, and it's not the most pleasant thing. It's getting better, but still. In iOS part, you often will need to work with Objective-C code even. You need to talk to your JavaScript realm through the bridge, and it's not the ideal situation, to be honest. There are better solutions. For instance, there is another similar framework called NativeScript, and they have this cool feature when they can generate bindings for native code automatically for you, but somehow this framework didn't get the popularity, and it's like 20 times less, maybe even 100 times less adopted than React Native nowadays. There is another thing based on React Native called Expo. It brings a lot of good stuff to what we have in React Native already. For instance, you can distribute and test your apps without publishing them to TestFlight or Google Play beta test or wherever else. They have an application called ExpoGo, and you can both test your apps locally there and actually let other people test it. They also maintain a lot of high-quality third-party modules, and they kind of cover like 90% of what you may need in your standard app. And in most cases, they are the best choice. The only downside using them everywhere is it's like in your bare React Native application that it will bring all the Expo dependency with them, but maybe it's not that bad. And you can expect them to maintain it all right for a long time, because they have a normal business model when they get money from paid services like CI/CD, some app distribution and build helpers, so it will not get anywhere very soon, I guess. Now Flutter. It's kind of, in my opinion, a bit strange one. It has a good performance, very active community, a lot of tutorials and third-party modules. The weird part about it is that the only native UI element it really uses is Canvas. It basically draws everything on a canvas, like from the ground up. Maybe that's why Flutter Flow is actually possible, but not a separate thing. It kind of brings downsides. The main downside for me is actually Dart. The language itself is fine, but kind of need to learn another language to use it. And this is the knowledge you'll not be able to apply literally anywhere else. Dart is for Flutter, and Dart is in Flutter. I don't know any real applications of it anywhere else. Also, there is a slight lag between the time when something new arrives in the operation system, like we have new version of iOS or Android. There is some new UI elements, and you'll probably need to wait some time before they arrive in Flutter because someone really need to re-implement it on a plain canvas. It probably will not be the case, the problem, if you use stable releases, but I expect you can see it in beta or alpha builds. Let's There are more cross-platform frameworks, but I will not cover them at the moment. Now, native and shared code. It would be nice to have all the goodies from native apps, but don't write API call twice in each when they like completely identical, and it's database stuff that's again completely identical and more to come. Actually, the oldest approach here is C++, but we can agree that it's for big guys, but not for everyone and mere mortals as we are. I know it was used a lot in Dropbox, for instance, and mainly not for performance reasons, but at that time, I think it was the only feasible way to share code between platforms without compromising with the performance, actually. But nowadays we have better stuff, and one of them is Kotlin multi-platform. Well, at some point, Kotlin replaced Java in Android world. It was made by JetBrains. With time, it was getting bigger, stronger, and trying to mutate in an all-purpose language. Then Kotlin native arrived, and that's how we ended up with Kotlin multi-platform in a way. Basically, the idea here is that you have your native apps, and you can share whatever code you like between them by making shareable modules, like in a world of web, it can be like an NPM dependency. It will be a jar file for Android and a framework or port for iOS. The good part about it, in my opinion, that it's very pluggable. You can actually start by just copying your native iOS and Android projects and just make it buildable and call it the first step. And from that point, you can share more and more code between platforms, and nothing prevents you from backing up and just writing code in each of them respectively. The good part about it is that the tech stack is familiar for Android team because it's Kotlin, but it's completely unfamiliar for iOS team. And arguably, Gradle's not that great, but we all live with it. I said that you can share as much stuff between apps you want, but that's not entirely true. You can share UI code with just Kotlin multi-platform, but you can do it with Compose multi-platform. It came from Android world initially. There is a relatively new UI framework, Jetpack Compose, that's similar to Swift UI in iOS world. And it was kind of ported to cross-platform world now. So the plus sides are the same as previously, plus that you can share any UI-related code now. The downside is that iOS part is still in alpha stage technically. Here, I guess I need to point out that while it's in alpha, I don't think it's unstable, and I don't think that you'll expect any significant API changes in like the top surface of the API, because it's based on the Jetpack Compose after all, and it's stable for years. But you can expect changes underneath it, so probably you shouldn't care much unless you develop in third-party libraries for Compose multi-platform, something like that. Okay, skip tools. That was actually something very new for me until recently. That's what will happen if iOS lobby is stronger than Android lobby in your team, probably. It's basically Compose multi-platform, but the other way around. That comes from the tagline, bringing Swift UI apps to Android. Again, we're getting fully native apps. The tech stack this time familiar for iOS team, but not so familiar for Android. It's still in the development phase, as far as I know, and that's the only paid framework I know at this moment. I don't think I met anything else but that's required to be paid on a yearly basis, and it's like $50-100 a year, which is not a big deal for a company, but well, quite a big deal for single developer, I'd say. There is a dry evaluation steps, and you can play with it and actually assess if it's good for you, but $500 still. The other downside is that you'll need to use Xcode. It's unfortunately that unpleasant compared to literally any IDE in existence. Yeah, it was a lot of talks, and as you can guess, it's not it. There are way more places to look at if you want to build cross-platform or hybrid app, just mobile apps. I didn't mention Xamarin, which probably mutated to .NET MAUI now, but the main point is that if you ask, can I use this language to build mobile apps, nowadays the answer probably will be yes. However, if you ask, should I, the answer probably should be no. The reason is anywhere the plane of triangle is too young, too dead, or too weird. So stick with popular solutions. Unless you have very good reason to use, for instance, Go. Any of these at the screen. Yeah, when we are talking about cross-platform, you can guess that it went beyond mobile already. You can build web apps with a lot of them. You can build desktop apps with a lot of them, but that's a separate story, a big one. I'll not cover it right now. So I guess that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the great presentation, Pavel. And now we're opening the question section. Do you guys have any questions?
How many hours have you been collecting these memes?
I spent like 8 hours to build everything, and maybe half of that I was selecting memes.
It's not a question, but more like appreciation of memes and how much effort you put into selecting and putting them in the right place with the right tone.
Thanks.
Do you plan to continue your presentations and tell in more detail about Kotlin multi-platform or anything else?
I guess if you guys interested in it, but I definitely will do it differently. I will rather make it ready and then schedule a meeting, not the other way around, because yeah, I was doing it yesterday till midnight.
Oh, I actually have one question. I have to work with a lot of like mobile frameworks and tools in university. It was more likely git clone and try to build the application, but I noticed something that most mobile technology is really tied to IDE, and I want to ask like why, and can mobile developer now, for example, using Vim or something like that, like an IDE, because I have some kind of situation when I try to build the application Flutter and Android application in VS Code, and I can do it, but I can build in, for example, in Android Studio.
Well, the short answer, you don't need Android Studio to build Android projects or like Android part of any Flutter, React Native, whatever else app. You do need Xcode to build iOS apps, not the UI, but XC build. I think this is the part you really need. So partly, yes, you like need IDE, but for Android, for instance, you can pretty much live without it. You'll be building it from console. You can basically do Gradle build, and that's it. So yeah, I'm not sure why you want it, to be honest. Because like it's possible, but again, it's like with some extravagant cross-platform frameworks. You can do it, but why? You need to do more steps. You'll have more problems, but without any visible gain, in my opinion. But yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, just
If you want to have more understanding how it happens, I suggest you looking at how CI builds are made for mobile projects, because that's basically what you will be calling if you do it from console.
Yeah, I understand that I can do it without like an IDE, but actually I experience like I have a bad experience with building from console and so on. And I noticed that, for example, like Android Studio sometimes made some magic things and not like, and I can notice it, and it's actually built. But when I try to do the same as I think in VS Code, I like can do it, and I have some like a lot of errors that actually unreadable.
Well, next time you'll find yourself in this situation, share some errors with me. I'll try to debug it, because it's literally can be million reasons. For one thing, Android Studio for years is distributed with a particular version of Java bundled in, and by default it uses that one. You may have a completely different one in your environment. For instance, you will have, what's that, like Java 18 or something, and you need Java 11 to actually build. Yeah, it's kind of partly why we have Kotlin now, because back in the days Google had was sued by Oracle for using certain Java APIs, and at some point we stuck with Java 1.8 when, well, everyone was on 11 and way beyond. So no new APIs from Java, no new syntaxes, nothing. No optimizations were available for Android for a long time. And in a way, that's how we ended up with Kotlin. That's why sometimes need to target particular quite old version, actually. So that might be one reason.
I just don't understand why mobile developers use some tools like Docker, for example, because if we have such a problem that you don't have the same version of Java, and then you don't have the same version of Gradle, and then the application just doesn't build, like why, for example, use Docker? I never reach any GitHub like Android application with a Docker or something like that.
I happy we are not using Docker, to be honest.
Maybe Nix or something like
we have Java to consume all the memory and resources already. We don't need Docker.
Okay, so that's fair. Okay.
I have a question too. I'm curious about your opinion, specifically about Flutter. Why, to your opinion, it's getting more and more popular? Because just once, for people who don't know, I was teaching in university, and once I asked a group of students, like, what do you expect to do after your graduation? And in one group, half of students told me that they were going to be Flutter developers. Yeah. and I'm wondering, why is it so like popular technology?
You know, partly it's the question you should ask Yulia, because she's a marketing person here, not me. I don't see any benefits of using Flutter, even compared to React Native, not mentioning native or Kotlin multi-platform, whatever else. I actually see less and less sense for you if you already are like mobile developer who worked with Android, with iOS, you know these platforms, or you know React Native, you know web. I mean, there is no starting point, but you know nothing when it makes sense to roll into Flutter. If you know web, go with React Native. If you know native platforms, still go with React Native, really, or with native platforms. I don't understand why you need to learn another language, however similar to Java, Kotlin, whatever, they like all similar nowadays. Absolutely different system of building things. They have this concept of widgets, and they're either stateless or stateful. And the more you look at them, the less sense it makes why it was built like this. At least that's happened to me. I tried to like Flutter at this point like 6 times, and it didn't happen. That's again my personal opinion. It's definitely cool technology. I really like that they decided to say just screw it, we'll use Canvas and make a language that can spawn and dispose of objects very, very quickly, so it doesn't matter how often we create new elements, create new structures, and then the other. But yeah, I really see a point in it.
Yeah, I see. If we just make a little step away from multi-platforms and so on, how do you think, like, so we have Flutter, and it's made by Google, right? And we have Android, which is also made by Google.
There is another operation system called Fuchsia, which is also made by Google. Google do things, and they also kill things. So I do not rely on literally anything they do.
So yeah, and I'm wondering, what is the trend now? Is still Google is still Google investing their resources into Android, or are they rather switching to Fuchsia, Flutter, and so on?
I don't know. There was this telling that the Dart team and the Flutter team are a bit of an outcast in the Google world. Yeah, they fired a lot of from that Flutter and Python department to hire dudes from India and Mexico like next day. So there is no like signals about Flutter's future here, really. Yeah, I don't know what's Google planning. They definitely, I'd say they still invest in Android, but they make a lot of stuff around, killing it randomly. Basically, Google will invest in what's increase its revenue, full stop.
Yeah, that's true.
From what I saw, like in sales regarding Flutter, usually businesses that don't have money and want to do something fast choose Flutter. So I don't know how to connect it with the students, but probably they also thought that it's like an easy way to go into mobile development. I don't know.
Why not React Native? Like, seriously. Apart from that's another new shiny thing. It was the same situation with React Natives some years ago, and that's kind of funny. By the time it actually went good, now everyone wants Flutter. Well, we all love new stuff. That's why web has gazillion web frameworks.
3 years ago, you hated React Native, but now you love it.
It was shit 3 years ago because it went way better now. Honestly, they were doing a lot of cool stuff. They actually, there is this part that was making it slow. Is the bridge. You have a JavaScript part that, well, we know that Node.js is fast. Node environment is fast. We know that native environment is fast, but they're completely different. So to talk between them, we have bridge that is slow. That's what was slow in React Native always, and it's getting better, and better. And there is actually a project to get rid of it altogether. For instance, it was as bad as several years ago. You was able to tell that the app uses React Native by finding a huge list there, like scroll, touch it. If it like stops immediately, it's most likely a native app. But if it's like continuous scrolling and then stops, it's probably a React Native app because it was 100% asynchronous. So you have like scroll events, and then touch events, and until scroll events are processed, it wasn't able to interrupt this chain of events to actually handle touch event synchronously. It's about very old React Native, but that was a thing. For instance, Flutter had this quirk that you can't scroll with like 2 fingers for some time. They're all weird in different ways, actually. Jetpack Compose has this strange thing that you can't select text and inputs for some reason. They all have baked in some parts. So it kind of boils down to the fact that if you need native, well, if you need ideal app, you'll probably go with native still. But in 99%, you'll do with React Native, to be honest. Maybe not.
And what is the 1% of the time when you have to go without native?
If you really care about performance, this is, well, not even performance, but some optimizations like battery life, maybe some low-end devices, complex UI. if you need to work with system services a lot, for instance, you really depend on background services, because they work really differently on Android and iOS, and the middle ground React Native provides is not the best you can get for Android still. Also, if you need to work with sensors, the more low level you need to get, the bigger chance you need a native app. Again, you can have parts of it native, parts of it cross-platform. If it's easy to have, for instance, your onboarding and sign-up routine in React Native or even web, and then have heavy lifting parts in native. So that's basically how apps like Facebook, Instagram was looking like back in the days. It wasn't all the way React Native.
Okay, just to prevent the silence, do you guys have any more questions?
Yeah, okay. I just got one. I know we always have these discussions about things like AI, Pavel, on Slack, but just seeing that one of the slides you had where you had so many different sort of frameworks and languages, I was wondering, is it going to be more? Do you think it's going to, or what your opinion is, if it's going to be more difficult for these kind of younger languages to get viral growth, I guess you would call it, with the sort of advent of AI? So, for instance, there's more chance that a big language now, or a more popular language now, will just naturally become more popular in the future because of that kind of exponential growth, where more people are asking AI a certain specific question to do with that language. And then the way the AI works, the more people that feed it that information, it grows and grows and grows. And then you end up with a sort of Google-esque, Apple-sized. So I'm just wondering how, do you see these smaller apps, smaller frameworks and things still having a chance in the future, or do you think that they're going to sort of get pushed away?
Interesting question. It's not mobile specific.
Yeah, sorry about that. Actually,
yeah, but that's actually interesting, because all your AI-based assistants are basically text completers, and the more data you have in the first place, the better they will work. So yeah, maybe that can be the case, actually, that some new stuff will have harder times to get traction in the future. Maybe we will not have another million of web frameworks thanks to that.
Yeah, I
Web wars.
Okay. So let's call it a meetup, right? Do you guys? Okay, I see no questions, so let's call it a meetup. Thank you guys for joining today. Thank you, Pavel, for the very nice presentation. And yeah, see you in the chats.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. It was awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.